sound okay?
Yes, perfect.
Hi everyone, how's it going? Are you okay? It's my pleasure to welcome you to this First Date Festival event. I'm joined by the wonderful Ellie Pilcher, and we're going to be talking about Ellie's book, That's What She Said. Just to properly introduce myself, I'm Ellie. So I'm Arusa. I'm a writer and editor and music programmer based here in Edinburgh, and I write mostly about music. I wrote this book, and some other stuff. But I'm really pleased to be here to chat to Ellie about the best in new contemporary romance. Now I need to just kind of say a couple of housekeeping things. Unfortunately, one of the authors that was part of this event, Sarita Domingo, this book, that section cover, she couldn't make it today because of illness, so we're sending her lots of good healing vibes. So it's just going to be us talking today, but we will try to bring in Possibility, the book, Sarita's book, as much as we can. And if you've read it, if you haven't, yeah, we'll talk about it and tell you a bit more about it as we go. So, just to introduce Ellie properly. So, Ellie Pilcher is a published author of commercial women's fiction and an award-winning marketing consultant in the publishing industry based in London. She is also a podcaster, content creator on TikTok, and founder of the Substack newsletter Market for Marketing. And just to kind of give you an introduction to Sarita as well, just to kind of give you a wee summary. Sarita Domingo is the author of Possibility, this book right here, The Three of Us, and creator, editor, and contributing writer of romantic fiction anthology Who's Loving You. Her novel If I Don't Have You was longlisted for the Diverse Book Awards 2021, and Possibility is a book about a 30-something woman who goes through a bit of a crisis when she has a health crisis that kind of derails everything in her life. I really recommend it, it's brilliant. Like I said, we'll talk about it a bit more. So I'm going to leave a bit of time at the end for questions. So if anyone has anything they want to ask Ellie, please keep it in mind and we'll come to you at the end. Same for the people at home. Hi, people at home. And I thought we would start by maybe just getting Ellie, if you're okay with it, to just introduce your book, tell us about it, tell us what it's about, and then maybe do a bit of reading.
Yeah, of course. Right, is this on? That's nice. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah, perfect, great. Okay, so That's What She Said. It's a story from the perspective of two female friends. One is Beth, who is a demisexual young woman who, after a disastrous Hindu, which I'll read a bit from, she is questioning what she knows about her sexuality and the experiences that she's had or hasn't had. And she starts to question it to her friend Serena, who is the other narrator, and she is a bisexual female main character with very high main character energy. She is a sexual being, very confident in her physical self, but is very closed off emotionally. And as soon as Beth says, I want to kind of do a sexual odyssey, Serena is all in. And so the two friends go on the sexual odyssey together. It's a look at female friendship, at the differences in friendships, strong female friendships to toxic as well, strong to toxic friendship, and what happens when you may or may not have similarities in your friends group and how you can divulge as you get older, particularly as the characters are approaching 30. So that's the general gist.
I loved it. I've had so much fun reading this book. So yeah, can't wait to hear you read it.
Okay, in which case I'll dive in a tiny bit. So I'm not going to start with the opening chapter, only for the fact it's a lot of dialogue and I can't do accents, so it will just be me talking to myself. So thank you. So instead I thought I'd start slightly later in. This is Serena's perspective after she's come to rescue her best friend from a disastrous Hindu, but ends up joining her instead. None of the hens were aware that it was TV theme night. She spent at the club of choice, not that it mattered to anyone but Gail. She spent the better part of 20 minutes shouting at a poor bartender while the rest of us headed downstairs to the disco to dance it out to I'll Be There For You. After Gail left, I got the already exhausted bartender to make up a batch of Club Tropicana shots, paying him a huge tip as a way of apology. Life hack, always get the bartender on side before you get shit-faced. That way they'll be much more favourable when you're a mess at the end of the night. I was a pro at this. And boy was I right about being shit-faced. Thanks to my pro-partying lifestyle, as a lifestyle and celebrity journalist, it typically took more than a bottle of Prosecco to make me feel remotely tipsy, but I forgot how quickly Beth could get pissed, not to mention the other hens were messy as fuck drunks. I would need at least 5 shots before I felt anything, and then just a few more shots to get blackout drunk, my favourite kind. Most people hate it, but I love the surprise the following day, And by surprise, I usually mean waking up on the floor of my kitchen with my head in an unused saucepan and my hand in a glass of water. Deciphering that instant had reminded me just how deep my daddy issues go. Later I found myself screaming, if only I'd been a boy on the dance floor, as I Don't Want to Be began to play. Beth, wasted and lovable at this point, slapped her arms over my shoulder and screamed, I'll always love you, before randomly starting to cry. The hen spotted her tears and instantly surmised that she was undone by the memories of One Tree Hill and joined the awkward hold. When the song finished, moments later, we were all crying and dancing together in the middle of the floor like an American football team grappling for a ball. That's it, girls, let it out, the DJ said, his diamond earring glittering. Oh, fuck off, I shouted. He countered by putting on Walking on Sunshine. No one can cry to that song. It's practically illegal. You have to sing and dance along like you're the solo dancing in an elevator where no one can see you. Upon being released from the American football hold, I gestured to Beth that I was getting a drink, and she sweatily clasped my hand to follow. I left her at the end of the bar while I went to cajole my tipped-up bartender to let me skip the queue and get 2 shots of tequila. He was obliging, as I intended. My français est très mauvais, I heard down the bar as I placed 2 limes in my mouth and classed the 2 shots in salt shaker. Non, très bon. In the space of 3 minutes, Beth had found a man. I almost dropped the tequila, or I would have if she wasn't attempting to talk to a man in another language. Voulez, she giggled, her foot slipping beneath her. Vous couchez avec tequila, I interjected as loudly as I could over the drum solo. Who wants tequila? I know you do. Effortlessly, I slipped between the man, who was very clearly not French, and handed Beth her tequila. She was instantly gratified, having not yet realised that she was attempting to get with a man for the first time. Not that get with a man meant anything to her beyond kissing and some heavy petting. That was one regret, as a good, no, best friend could halt in its tracks. We were gonna boulay together, the bloke slurred, his spittle spraying on my cheek. Somehow, my foot gave way beneath me as well, and my tequila shot spilled down his shirt. Oh shit, I said, I'm so sorry. We're gonna get cleaned up. Beth just shot her tequila without the lime, and was now sporting an agonised expression on her face, but she followed me. Yuck, 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 she groaned, diving into the first available cubicle to spit into the system. She had a remarkable gag reflex when it came to drinking. I knew not to worry about her throwing up on a night out from drinking. She was much more of a hangover vomit girl than on the night one. As for me, it's a good thing I had the money to pay taxi fines. I splashed water on my face, glancing in the mirror to spot that the hen-mandated glitter on my face had lasted surprisingly well. I was now sporting 1 red glitter eyebrow and 1 blue. Stunning. I bet I could still pour looking like some Brexit wanker. I'll leave it there.
Oh, that was great. Thank you so much. Like I said, I had so much fun reading this book. If you haven't read it yet, I mean, you'll have a lot of fun as well. So, do you want to start by maybe telling us how you came to actually write this book? Where did it start? When did you know you were ready to work on it?
Yeah, I was, I know it was September 2019, which is so long ago now. It feels like decades. It was my friend's birthday. She triggered the idea in me. We were out getting shit-faced, funnily enough. And it was having cocktails out of teapots in this kind of smoking garden. And we were a bit drunk, as mentioned. And she turned to me after we lamented dating and her terrible experiences of dating recently. And she just looked at me with all sincerity in her face and just said, when I look for a man, I look for you with a penis. And it was the best thing anyone's ever said to me.
That's really sweet.
It is really, really sweet. It's so flattering. But I knew what she meant. It was that sense of she's my best friend, I'm hers. We've known each other since I was 11, and that relationship between us is kind of, it's never going to go. It's been 20 years. I haven't got rid of her yet, or vice versa, her me. And it's kind of the true love. It's the love story that's going to last, and platonic love is just as powerful as romantic love. And I kind of wanted to showcase that in fiction. And then at the same time as that was happening, I was also coming to terms with the fact I'm demisexual. And I say coming to terms, it wasn't so much coming to terms, it was actually education. I'd never heard the term demisexual till I was 25. And as soon as I did, from a book in fact, which was Radio Silence by Alice Oatman, as soon as I heard it, I realised, oh, that's me. That explains a lot. But I didn't know what it meant for me as a person going forwards with regards to dating and family and kids and things like that. So I was coming to terms with that side of things. And so we then went into the pandemic in March 2020, and this kind of idea of friendship and demisexuality and different experiences had been ruminating. And suddenly I had a lot of time on my hands, and the idea just kind of came, and it was every weekend, March to August 2020, just writing, and it came out in then. So I kind of got the first draft done at that point. It's changed a lot since then, but the bare bones of it, the friendship, the two people, very different sexualities, but really strong relationship, kind of remained.
So, actually touching on the topic of Beth, the central character, one of the central characters, her demisexuality, it is something that is kind of front and centre in the book. It's really important, I guess, to the story. Why did you want to put her demisexuality kind of, like I said, front and centre in this whole journey that she goes through, which we'll talk about in a minute?
I think the main thing was, at the time that I was kind of learning about demisexuality and my sexuality, I couldn't find any adult literature on it. I found a bit of non-fiction, I found a bit of YA, I found some adult fantasy with demisexual characters, but I couldn't find a story that was based on contemporary fiction or even historical or something of that ilk that I could kind of relate to without having to imagine fairies and magical vortexes in there as well. So I thought to myself, why are these books? And ultimately I just thought, well, I need to write one then. And having previously written a book, having previously been published and also working in publishing, I could see a kind of gap in the market, but it wasn't necessarily, I wasn't writing for that gap, I was writing for me. But yeah, demisexuality, I think any sexuality that is underutilised or underrepresented even in fiction or non-fiction should be discussed more, and I think stores like Lighthouse are brilliant at kind of showcasing. You can just see quite a load on the side here, at showcasing those experiences. But as someone going through it later in life, even though 25 is not that late in life, I just really couldn't find people like me in situations I am or could be in, and I wanted to basically write a book for someone that was in a similar position that wanted that book. So yeah, it was important to me.
I mean, you were downstairs, you were saying this is the book for you, and I totally understand what you mean by that. And I said to you as well that, you know, you could tell you had a great time writing this in that just reading the book itself and just reading the characters of Beth and Serena. So, kind of touching on the demisexuality of Beth, you talk about this idea of her sexual odyssey throughout the book, and that's like a big part of the story. Would you mind telling us a bit more about this idea of sexual odyssey and where it came from, and why you wanted to make that part of her journey?
Yeah, it's in the book it comes about because Beth kind of is talking a lot about sexuality and her sexual experiences and the lack thereof, and Serena kind of says you just need to go out there and give things a go, because she's very, well, in Serena's opinion anyway, Beth is quite closed off. She never really pushes forward. She kind of thinks, oh, this is my life, so I'll just stick to it. So Serena's really the one who, like I said, is very confident, kind of gives her this list of things to do, which sometimes I think a good friend will do. They'll kind of say, look, here are 3 things to make your life better, or here are 3 things to help you get this job, or something like that. It's your friends are there to challenge you as much as anything. And so that's how it came about in the books. But actually, from an inspirational point of view, many years beforehand, before I kind of realised about demisexuality, but I've been discussing this kind of fear around virginity and such at university and the lack of experience. I had a very good friend who said to me, again, she was very sexually confident and very, you know, body confident, and she said, you know what you got to do? You just got to get completely naked, smother yourself in lube, and see what happens. And I kind of just like, I'm not going to do that, but I appreciated the advice, and I kind of thought, if it's that easy, maybe. So it kind of opened doors, but that's also in the book as well. But it's so yeah. So I think sometimes you need those friends to challenge you and to make you feel like it could just be that easy way of thinking things. And so that's kind of the creation of the sexual odyssey list, which, to be fairness to Beth, she does do a lot of it. She really pushes the bow out, and she does learn a lot from it, but it also fractures their friendship quite a lot, because there's a lot of pressure from a few of them too.
Yeah, I guess speaking of the friendship of Beth and Serena, so I know you said at the start that you had that amazing compliment from your best friend, which is fantastic.
I want on a t-shirt.
So where did the characters of Beth and Serena come from, and what made you want to bring these two, like, almost opposites together?
Yeah, originally the story was just going to be from Beth's perspective, and I know a lot of people say, oh, she's based on you. Her experiences are similar, but the character is not at all, to be honest, very different sensibilities. But it was going to be her narration and her focus, and then, this is sound incredibly wanky, but the character of Serena wouldn't shut up and just kept butting into scenes, and I realised, oh, this is a story beyond the kind of top line level of friendship. This is much more about the differences in friendship. So it sort of deviated from where I originally thought it was going to go, kind of looking at demisexual experiences, into being a mix of demisexual and bisexual experiences and emotional experiences as well as physical, and it opened a lot of doors. But the character of Serena, I think, is an amalgamation of all these friends I've had who have been, like the one with the lube comment, the one with the penis comment. There's always kind of an amalgamation of people that I kind of pick and choose from. It's like a zombie or a Frankenstein's, not monster, but a creation of a character. But yeah, Serena just would not shut up.
I like that.
Yeah.
And in terms of the actual writing process, did you come to write one first and then the other, or was it very much a mix as you were doing it?
I started predominantly just writing Beth because that was the intention, and then kind of about halfway through I went back and started writing Serena. So around probably the point where they start to deviate actually in terms of their friendship starts to fracture, like I said. That's when I kind of was writing them simultaneously, side by side. But I did have kind of techniques to get into each of the characters' voices, namely playlists. So I had one for Beth and I had one for Serena because I probably could write 2 or 3 chapters a day depending on how I was feeling. So usually they're kind of multi-chapters in one go. So yeah, there's a lot of kind of 90s pop for Beth, and then Serena's was much more kind of Taylor Swift.
And as you were writing, so you say when you came to write Serena's part, did it make you go back and change how you were writing Beth in a way?
It did to an extent, because I think I could see I didn't have to describe as much in Beth's character in chapters because Serena's kind of chapters did that instead. So there was a lot more editing and then a lot more kind of introspective looking rather than kind of looking at what other people are doing or how they're reacting. Which I think, to be honest, when you're thinking about sexuality and such, you are often thinking about what other people are thinking or what they do. Like, oh, I could cover myself in lube, but I'd still be thinking, what's that person thinking about this situation? So it's yeah. So that was interesting to kind of look at Beth's perspective instead, from the feeling she gets rather than what other people are thinking.
And I guess just to bring in possibility, because I thought it's good to talk about. Both books share some themes that are similar in that there's a lot less self-love and self-pleasure in both these books, and I think that's a really important topic, an important area. Why did you want to, why do you think it's so important for books like this to put queer and feminist love front and centre, and do you think it's still seen as quite radical in contemporary romance?
To an extent, yes. I mean, I think with mine, because I was writing for myself in a kind of lockdown situation, I wrote almost fearlessly. I didn't really think about, okay, what's an audience going to think about this scene with a dilator or this smear test scene or any of these kind of very intimate moments. I was just writing them because I was like, well, these things happen. Women do get smear tests and they do have awkward experiences, and that's completely normal. Why aren't we talking about it? So I think it could be considered radical because it's still taboo. It could be considered radical because it's not sexy. But I think it's more a case of I'd rather show authenticity and what it could be like and have someone go, oh, I've had an experience like that, or that sounds like something that could happen, but at least now I kind of have a way to make it funny, than to write something fade to grey or not talk about it at all. And I think the theme of self-pleasure, particularly the character of Serena, who, like I said, is very kind of self-confident, it was just important to show that women's pleasure still is very much a part of literature, because I think, again, that gets glossed over a lot, sometimes for the sake of male pleasure, and sometimes just because it's still considered very much something that we don't talk about for whatever reason, and it's still not seen in film and TV. You know, you don't see a man go down a woman often. If you do, it's often played for, oh, that's a surprise, but in actual fact, so yeah, so I think that's that side of it too.
Yeah, that's an element of, yeah, because both your books I really enjoyed. Impossibility, like I said, the central character, she has this health crisis and kind of derails everything, and she goes on, I guess, her own sexual odyssey in a way, but in a very different way. In the book, she's an aspiring DJ, and she works in radio, and she kind of uses this health crisis as a way to kind of speak things into existence, I guess. And she decides that she's going to do all these things, and it's going to happen, and they do. And part of that is, like I said, self-love and pleasure, and that's a really important part of the story. So yeah, I think it's, like you said, you don't see it as often in TV and film, but it is such an important and valued part of you know, romance generally.
I think also just as the point as well with regards to kind of Beth's perspective as a demisexual woman, and there's still this kind of curiosity, and also not people don't know in terms of asexuality what self-pleasure means to asexual people, and it's different. There's no universal experience, but I think it was important again with that whole wanting to show a demisexual experience and open the doors to that side of things, that just because you're asexual doesn't mean that self-pleasure doesn't exist. sexual feelings towards another person that you don't have, it doesn't necessarily mean that you don't still go with your hormones when it comes to your libido or when it comes to physicality. So I wanted to kind of open that door too and show that it is still possible for an asexual person to be sexual in a different way. So yeah.
And just talking about the genre itself and contemporary romance, how did you get into writing romance in the first place?
I think to be honest, I just read so much of it all at once. 'Cause I used to write historical primarily as a teenager, and I always thought that was kind of where I'd end up writing. And then typically all the books I've ever published have been contemporary fiction. But I think when I turned kind of 21, 22, I just moved to London for the first time. And again, it was searching for the stories of my life, my friend's life, something I recognised, and also that escapism. And creating, it's like manifesting as well, and thinking about possibility in terms of that, bringing things to life or hoping for things to happen in a certain way, or when things don't live up to expectation, wanting to kind of raise the bar slightly in imagination perhaps. But I think I read so much of it that it inspired me to kind of want to bring my own view into the world as well. But contemporary romance has changed from a publishing point of view. It's changed quite a lot over the last 5 years, particularly during the pandemic and the rise of TikTok and such, and definitely with LGBT stores we're seeing so much more come through, which is great. But there's so much more diversity than there was when I was younger, where it was basically Jane Austen and Mills and Boon. So that makes me sound ancient. God, not that ancient, there was a load of other stuff too in YA and things, but there wasn't much that comes to mind as that was a really big book. It was maybe Bridget Jones, but...
So what would you say you personally love about the genre, like both back then and also now?
I think, to be honest, now it's a case of there could be so much more diverse and more experiences, because with historical you're always looking back, you're kind of limited as to what the morals of the day were. With fantasy there's world building, there's creation, and that's amazing, but in terms of diversity, in terms of contemporary romance even, there's so much lived experiences, and every single person is different, so every single person's story and every single person's story will differ, and I just love that we're getting such creative stories that touch on so many different experiences and could happen to anybody. And it is like a menu of just like, what do you want to feel today? Because this story is a tiny bit different to this one, but it will make you feel entirely different depending on the weather. Who knows? But yeah, I just love the mix and the imagination that's coming through for me. It's a very, very exciting genre right now.
And I guess linking to that is, what would you like to see more of in the future? And what do you think, in terms of characters and different stories, are currently missing or just not told enough?
Oh, it's an interesting one. I'd like to see some more in the way of historical romance, actually. I think there's been a bit of a pigeonhole with obviously the rise of Bridgerton, that's wonderful, and the Regency romance and things. I still think there's a stigma attached to historical romance as being the sort of cheesy rich bodices and such. I quite like some, I don't say realistic, but something more like In Memoriam, that kind of really intense relationships and such, just slightly more romantic and less definitely in terms of people dying in World War I. But so yeah, maybe something in that side of things. But then I think just the continuation of just surprising the audience, and in general, I'd actually like publishing to open the doors more, listen to booksellers, listen to readers, because it's not going away, it shouldn't. And so just more in general, please.
Just because at the start I said that you were a content creator on TikTok, and I know TikTok's a huge place for people to talk about things like romance especially. How have you found it generally, just in terms of your work in publishing and the genre itself? Have you been able to find a lot of recommendations? Have you found the community growing?
Yeah, it's every time I open TikTok and I put in romance, I'll get a different type of video depending on whatever the algorithm wants to show me that day. But I love the fact that it's bringing to light kind of, it used to be what people call kinks, I suppose, in terms of, there was a Minotaur romance that came up the other day that sounded fabulous. And I don't know why, I've never really wanted to read Minotaur romance before, but okay. And I just think it's kind of, it's opened the doors to people to read things they want without it having to be a guilty pleasure, or something that you hide, or something that you order online and read on your ebook or you cover the front cover of. Now it's just a case of read whatever the hell you like, it doesn't matter what's on the cover, or what the book is, or anything like that. And I think that's kind of great. People are nodding, so hopefully that's great. But yeah, so I think that's, TikTok really has opened me to lots of different areas. Like I was talking to someone this morning about romance horror is coming in, and romantic suspense, paranormal romance. There's so many different, you can add anything in front of romance or after it. And I think TikTok in the last 5 years really has been the turning stone to that, the reason it's happened. So yes, I think that's a big change. But publishing hasn't yet conquered manufacturing TikTok in any way, I don't think. So in terms of what's coming out, it's very authentic to what readers want, which is why I think TikTok as a platform right now is very important to listen to.
I totally get it. It just on like the music side of things, a lot of people in music scoff at like TikTok and it's like whatever. But actually, I find so much stuff on TikTok, and I know a lot of labels that are actually looking at TikTok for not just the next best thing, but also what people are talking about, listening to. And I find it very weird when people in the industry, publishing, music, whatever, go, ugh, it's that thing, but it's important.
Yeah, there's still my favourite thing about when I was in acquisitions meetings in publishing, when someone would bring a romance book, the first thing about someone in marketing or publicity or sales would say, is it like lemon and herb hot, or is it like Nando's hot? And are we talking like we can't get this in bookshops because it's so smutty, or are we talking that it's like fade to grey, nothing much happens, it's all off the page? And those conversations are still happening, which is both a good thing and a bad thing, because I think as soon as you say, okay, it's like Nando's hot, super smutty, there's this, that and the other, people kind of go, oh, we can't sell this. But in actual fact, there is such a voracious audience for those genres. You can sell anything so long as the audience is there. And TikTok has proven they are. So I think that's maybe also what I want to change in the romance. Not so much the books that are being produced, it's the books that are being published.
Absolutely. And actually, from the publishing point of view, because you also work in publishing, how does dealing with romance differ to other genres that you might work with?
It's definitely less cut and dry. I think you can come in with a crime novel and say, look, this is the potential for a series or a TV show, or it's got this running character that's going to be great, and usually always they're alcoholics, they have dysfunctioning families, it's kind of tick box. And I think with romance, it differs so greatly. It used to be a kind of, okay, digital only, push that there, and it'll be big for summer reading, and then we'll leave it off again. Whereas now it's an all year round thing. We see the success of the likes of like Emily Henry, and the different types of romances that come through that are clever romances or just fun romances. There's no less than in the genre, but I still think there is a less than opinion of romance in publishing. I don't think there's yet a publishing imprint that is just solely publishes on romance. As far as I'm aware, maybe a few digital ones, but not in the big publishers. There's no kind of dedicated, like this person's just focused on buying as much editing and buying editing and as much romantic fiction across the entire spectrum. Which I'd love to see.
And do you think that's still to do with what you're saying earlier about people seeing it as a guilty pleasure kind of thing?
I think so. I think there's definitely an element of that. I think there's also a case of our buyers buying it from the likes of supermarkets and Waterstones. I think actually it's more independent bookshops and self-published authors and things like that. So I think there's just a disconnect between the two. And yeah, people don't really, it's still so new in the sense it's a really old genre, it's a very popular genre, but it's all the new stuff that's coming through, the new representation, that people just don't know where to put it. There's no kind of neat space. So until the royal we of publishing kind of figure that out, we are going to be slightly limited. But then thankfully for TikTok and self-publishing and indie businesses, indie presses, we are definitely getting a lot more diversity, which I love, and I think it will change for the better. But yeah, it's not happening as quickly as I'd like it to.
Fair, but also thanks to festivals like First Day.
Oh yeah, exactly.
This is why we're here to celebrate all the great stuff that happens in romance. So what do you want people to take away from reading this book? What is like your main kind of hope that what people will feel after they read? That's what she said.
Yeah, I mean, I hope they laugh. I'd like to make people laugh, but I think the big thing for me, whether or not someone likes the story, because I'm aware that as an author, not everyone is going to love the book, but if someone likes it, loves it, or just feels seen by it, that will very much make me happy. If someone picks this up and goes, oh, that's my sexuality, or oh, it's so good to see representation of what it's actually like to be a woman in the modern age of dating, or that's what happened at my smear test, I'm glad it wasn't just me. Even if they don't like the rest of the book, that I'll still be happy with that. Obviously I'd love them to like the book, and if they do, to leave a review. But yeah, I think that was what I was looking for. I didn't care what the story was I was looking for, I was just looking to find me and my experiences in a book, so that's my aim for this one, very much so.
And actually, since you've written this book and it's come out, have you come across other stories where there's a demisexual character?
I have, yeah. It's been really nice. I've been visiting various bookshops, doing stock signings and such, and whenever I go, I'm always quite impressed to find there's usually asexual areas now, particularly if I go to the LGBT bookshop in particular, there's always going to be, or there is always usually, an asexual or aromantic section, which wasn't there 5 years ago, 3 years ago even, which I love. And it's still the smallest section, but I don't mind so long as there's more books coming in, and I purchased quite a few at my recent trips because I want to read that one, and that one sounds great. And obviously it's not just demisexuality, there's grey sexuality and asexuality and aromanticism, so there's a lot more on the age spectrum as there is with any kind of sexuality. And it's just nice to see other books coming through. I would like to see more adult books. There's still a lot of YA, and the big kind of criticism of my book in particular from readers is that they kind of thought it was young adult, but it's because it's a coming of age story. So there's that sense of you come of age at the age of 18. And I get where they're coming from, but it's the case that I didn't realise my sexuality till I was 25. I know other people that still don't know their sexuality, and they're probably my age or older, so in their 30s now. And there's no kind of age range of you have to know your sexuality, what you want to do with your life, how it's going to affect you. So I kind of understand where they're coming from, but I think there is an element of pigeonholing where you have to figure out and know precisely what your sexuality is, and it cannot change, and you cannot be wrong, or you cannot discover more about yourself. So that element I'd like to see more adult fiction rather than lots of YA.
No, I think that's a very valid point, and like you said, I'm glad that there are more coming out, but let's get more.
Let's get more. Yeah, not
more.
less. Still want more YA as well, but more adult too.
Yeah. Well, yeah. Speak into existence.
Yes.
As
Possibilities,
impossibility. Just looking at the time, and I'm realising we should maybe move on to asking folks any questions. That includes folks at home. So, would anyone like to ask Ellie a question? And also folks at home. If not, I will ask another one. What would you say was the hardest thing about writing the book?
I think it was giving myself permission to say the things I did. Because I was lucky in the sense I was writing it in the pandemic. I was writing it for myself more than writing for an audience or writing for a reader. So I could kind of say whatever the hell I like without fearing, oh, I need to edit that later, or that I can't say that. But there was still strange actually how many times I was like, oh, I'm writing about a tantric workshop, I can't write that. Or the smear test scene, which was the first scene actually probably I wrote away from the kind of the second edit, I'd say maybe, in terms of I wrote the book and then I added it in. It was a kind of, do I share this? I don't know, can I share this? I didn't know what they were going to do, revoke my author card, tell me it can't be, it has to be burnt, I don't know.
You
You have to leave, I don't know what it was. But that was probably the bit I felt most fearful. And then when I wrote it, I felt so much better. But it has been harder since getting the book deal to kind of, now I'm writing my next and editing my next one. I have, my agent's wonderful, she's my first editor. And she said to me when I first handed in my latest, she was like, it's good, but you're missing your usual kind of honesty. And I was like, how much? You've got a few fade to grey moments, and you've got this scene that could go further, but you've held back, and I can tell. And she was right, I had held back, because I suddenly thought, oh, but I'm writing for a publisher now, I'm writing for the reader, I can't say it. It's like the whole point of your first book was to reveal what actually goes on and to be authentic and open and break taboos. So stop writing for the reader and write for yourself again. And that was very, as soon as she said that, I was like, oh, I have permission, okay. Go for
That's
it.
so tough, and how do you get out of that mindset when you're kind of in it? You know, it's really hard.
You just need someone, it's a good friend, once again, telling you the truth or challenging you or writing you a list of 3 things to do, so.
Absolutely. Anyone want to ask them? Should we? Okay, well, start. You want to go first? So just to repeat the question.
Yes, so to repeat the question in terms of kind of how much is it a case of how much I pull from my personal life in terms of the scenes and how much I didn't, or where I put the line for each. I think there are certain scenes, so the smear test scene was inspired by a smear test I had and the experiences, because actually I have multiple attempts at smear tests as a demisexual woman, and telling the medical staff in terms of like my sexuality, and they just disregarded it. I had one person tell me that was broken, a medical professional to say, okay, you're not clearly okay, you need some mental assistance. I was like, I just don't want to have sex. Okay. I didn't put that in the book, but I kind of, all those experiences inspired this sort of, it's women's experiences if you're a lesbian as well, if you're kind of, if when they ask you are you sexually active, the expectation that you're heterosexual and things like that. So it was a case of, I'm not necessarily going to go into complete details to what precisely happened in that room or those rooms, but I am definitely going to show the kind of experiences of what could happen or has happened. And in the book, actually, I kind of wrote the nurse to be much more considerate and understanding and inquisitive, I think, curious. So that was kind of almost changing the narrative from what did happen to what I would prefer to happen, so it was more wishful thinking. But there are other scenes as well that kind of, I've never been to a tantric workshop, although I am tempted to go now.
No, I think you have to now.
I think I have to now. I had to find someone to go with me. But I think there's definitely a kind of line that I don't cross, partially because I couldn't. It was a lockdown. I couldn't go to a tantric workshop to kind of do any research. That would have been a fun expense though. But yeah, so there's a few. But I think I've always been inspired by things that have happened in my life and my family and my friends, and the quotes, like I said, that are genuinely in the book. And my friends, some of them have read it, and they kind of do come up to me saying, so this character's me, or they'll say that character was based on me, or that line was something I said to you. So yeah, and I think so long as it's, for the most part, so long as it's favourable, people are fine with it. But yeah, I mean, the Hindu, the opening scene is inspired by Hindu I went on, and I actually had a great time at that Hindu, but I haven't been on another one. So when I was asked to add that scene in, and I went up to my cousin, it was hers, and I said, look, can I borrow your Hindu? And she went, yeah, great, of course you can. I was like, it's really horrible. She's like, oh. The look of disaster on her face, like, it's fine, it wasn't really. So yeah, so there's thin barriers between me and my real life. Anyway.
Thanks. We'll hear and then we'll go online.
I have a question about like improv how it was fiction since you guys are not possible.
Mm-hmm.
That to me is not about like romance fiction that is very gendered as well. So very lost in as that is like one of the most like important historically authors, and she's still looked down upon by so many people. And we noticed there's been a shift in like the audience that goes for romance with this kind of emergence of TikTok. That's shifted at all over the past few years.
Yeah, so has the audience of romance shifted at all over the rise of TikTok? I think I don't know if it's shifted precisely. I think it's come out in the light a bit more in terms of how many people read romance. I think we always knew there was a voracious readership there, but we didn't quite realise how much. I still think it is predominantly women, although we are definitely seeing more in the way of men starting to read it, although I'd again generalise slightly, it's the LGBT community. But I don't know many heterosexual straight men that just kind of read romance for the sake of it, unless it's kind of got this big TV show behind it, or this big moment, or they're reading it because their girlfriend's reading it, or their wife or something, or their partner, or whatever it may be. But yeah, I still think it is gendered, and it is still looked down upon. I think there's something about, you can sit and watch Bridgerton and your partner, your husband or someone can sit with you and be like, I don't like this, and then secretly like, oh my god, I can't believe Anthony did that. And that genuinely happens all the time. So I think there's an element of, you like this, why don't you read it? But it's still very much gendered. But then so is reading in general, women read more, women buy books for men. So there is definitely male readership, but there's also not an audience, that's not an audience that's catered for. Publishing caters for women, but strangely enough, the most female, and I put that in quotes, is, or finger marks even, is romance, and yet it's the one that's looked down upon the most, yet readers are predominantly female, so it's kind of backwards. But like I said, diversity and stuff, it is changing. And I think TikTok is opening the door slightly, but it is still very, very much in that realm at the moment, and I don't think it's changed significantly in terms of targeting either. So the outlets they're usually pink and have flowers, and they go down the gender route, even it's subconsciously. There's definitely a subconscious element to it. So yeah, not changed much, but might do. Hopefully will.
Thanks for that question. Should we go online?
So this is a question from Pip. Are the objects on the cover Easter eggs for the book content?
Are the objects on the cover Easter eggs from the book? So yes and no. I wouldn't say there's kind of any particular scenes and such necessarily with the objects in mind. There's kind of a tequila bottle, the shots from the bar scene. You've got high heels and pearls. The pearl, actually, God, they are Easter eggs. Just realising that now. The pearl necklace, it's kind of throwaway lines rather than scenes. There is a pearl necklace comment. The tiara is definitely from the Hindu. And then the candles are from a scene with an escort called Rupert. They should have put some headphones on because there's an important scene with headphones.
Very
good.
good.
That's very good. But yeah, so apparently yes, I just didn't realise.
Love that. Any other questions here or online? Yeah.
So this one is from Joy. Who would you cast in a screen version of the book, and would it be a series or a movie?
Oh, so in terms of casting for a TV series or film, I think, to be honest, I've always imagined if it were a film or TV, it probably would be a film. But I would be open to a TV show. That would be great. Kind of like a 4-parter maybe, not too long. Would be like a 22 episode arc, but you run out of stories very quickly. But I think in terms of casting, I used to motivate myself, and I still do when I write my books. I always kind of do castings and marketing activities because I'm a marketer. So this book had a 10-page marketing plan. None of it was ever used. It's not, the whole purpose is just to think of, what could this book do if I finished it? But I did have a casting list for this one, and I don't remember exactly who it was for Beth. That used to change a lot in my mind, but the character of Serena I always envisioned as being Florence Pugh.
That's exactly who I was picturing.
There you
When
go,
I was reading
Florence
it.
Pugh. So mostly because she can do anything, and if I could meet anybody, I want to meet Florence Pugh. But I think the character, but I could never find anyone to match Florence Pugh energy. So if anyone has any ideas for Beth, please let me know. But it could be someone completely unknown. I think it could be quite
You
fun.
have to think about this.
Yes, it'd be interesting. I did definitely cast the love interests. So that was done in my head. That was Alfred Enoch, who's mentioned in the book actually. I was having a fangirl moment whilst watching How to Get Away with Murder. So, tall, blonde, handsome, yes, absolutely. I could, like I said, I could go through the entire casting of the entire book. But it's a great way. If you are writing a novel, I recommend doing a cast list because it's a great way to motivate yourself to finish it as well. Thinking one day this could be, and it could be.
Needs to happen now.
Yeah, we just send a copy to Florence Pugh.
Anything else online? Yeah. Or here?
So this is a question from Erin. Would you ever write a sequel?
Would I ever write a sequel? I get this is probably the question I get asked the most actually, usually from friends and family who just don't understand how standalones work. I'd never say never. I don't have a brilliant memory when it comes to, for some reason my stories, once they're finished, it's almost like my brain deletes them to make room for the next story. So I once had a book that was published and I was talking about how much I disliked the name Crystal for whatever reason. I was just having a rant one day, and my friend went, "You do realise your main character's called Crystal, right?" I was like, "Is it? I had a character called Crystal?" And so I do have a terrible memory. I think this one's slightly different because I wrote it for me, in a sense, so I probably would remember it. But if I were to write a sequel, I don't know what would happen. I think it would have to be a sequel adjacent almost. I'd have to write about Delphi, who's another character in the book, rather than write about Beth and Serena, but have Beth and Serena in those stories instead. So maybe kind of in the universe, but not direct sequel. I think their story is told, but maybe someone else's could come into the
I'd
fold.
love to hear more about Delphi. That'd be cool.
Delphi's quite, she's kind of the voice of reason, sort of fun friend of Beth's who's just like, "Oh my god, Serena's annoying." That kind of friend that doesn't like the other friend. Yeah.
It all works
The
out.
balance, you know. You always have one of those.
I have a question for you, just relating to something you just said when we were talking about Florence Pugh. If you could give your book to anyone, knowing that they would definitely read it, who would it be?
Florence Pugh. Definitely Florence Pugh. I think it sounds, this people might think, really, but actually I knew it to J.K. Rowling. She made some comments about asexuality a few days prior to my book's release, so actually thank you J.K. Rowling, you improved my sales. But I'd give it to her because I think she needs to understand asexuality, and she clearly doesn't. And so I would entirely expect her to trash it and say she hated it and whatever else, because she's a very damaged woman. But in terms of the actual education side of it, I think I would give it to her and say, "Look, read that. Still don't make any comments, but just read it to understand it before you make comments."
That's a really good idea. Excellent answer. Anything else online or here? And the last question I'll ask you in that case is, what are you working on at the moment and what's next for you?
I am about to go back on submission, which basically is a fancy way of saying I'm asking my publishers to publish me again. I've got a Christmas romance with a grey sexual main character, so still in the A spectrum, but grey sexuality slightly differs from demisexuality in that it's you feel sexual attraction at completely random moments to maybe someone you're in a relationship with, or maybe a complete passing stranger on the street. You don't know when it's going to hit. So I've got that coming, set in London, set in my favourite time of year. I love Christmas, but there is a very slowly burns, friends to lovers kind of fun romance to it, which has been really, really fun to write. It's kind of my attempt at writing a non-holiday movie. The kind of Jack Black, Kate Winslet in reverse relationship, because I love that relationship in particular. If Jack Black can get with Kate Winslet, anyone can get with anyone. So,
I thought that was my last question, but actually this is my last question. Because obviously Possibility is a great book as well. Are there any other contemporary romance books or authors that you would recommend for people who are maybe just getting into romance especially?
I think there are so many. I didn't know if I could just recommend a few. I think, to be honest, it depends really on your taste and what you're looking for in a book, because it's a case if you're looking for kind of a heterosexual relationship, I'd say Beth O'Leary. I think The Flat Shame's brilliant. If you're looking for kind of more ace fiction, I just picked up a book by Anita Kelly, which I think is brilliant, called How to Get a Girl, which I think is fab, and there's so many others as well, and I think it's just a case of what you're looking for in the moment and the experiences and such. And there's so much more to come. I know publishers have been buying books for like 2027, 2028, so this romance genre is just going to keep building and booming, and it's going to be fabulous.
And very last question, how can people follow you, keep up with what you're doing?
Yeah, I'm on TikTok, just my name, Eleanor Pilcher, and then on Instagram and also my newsletter, my Substack, where I share all things about writing and publishing, and I probably will be talking about romance at some point because it is a very, very big genre. So yeah, lots to talk about.
So I think unless there's anything else online, no? Great. All that's left to do is to say thank you so much, Ellie, for chatting to me and talking about your book.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Also, just very quickly to say, please do pick up Possibility as well if you can. It's really good. It's got a big music focus, so I really recommend it. Especially, it's got some great like playlisting and music creation in it, which is really cool. Thank you also so much to Lighthouse and to Christina for organising and making this festival so cool. Please do check out what else is happening at Lighthouse. There's always really, really good events here. And yeah, that's all. Thank you and enjoy the rest of your evening.
Thank you.